Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net. And you can hit me up on your preferred podcast platform, subscribe to the podcast, and never miss an episode. Look back on the archive and all that good jazz. What an awesome show we have for you guys today. I'm going to be joined on the podcast shortly by Chris Wescott. He is the Senior Manager of Content Strategy for the New Jersey Devils hockey team. Just a tremendous conversation coming up with Chris. We hit on so many good areas. The Devils are really doing great things in the social space, and you're going to learn a lot from him. And before we get to that conversation, I want to tell you a theme that really stood out among many. You're gonna come away with a lot of good insights from this chat with Chris. But one area that we talked about was the development of the New Jersey Devils' voice and brand and North Stars. You'll hear him talk about, and and a lot of times we talk about brand in the social media space and personality and all that. And we tend to think of, it's just copy on Twitter, or it's copy on Instagram, or it's what kind of memes you use, or when you troll others. And that's one part of it, one small part of it. And when you really take a stand as an organization and say, this is who we are, this is who our fan base is, and who we're going to be for them, it's really powerful. And to hear Chris talk about what the New Jersey Devils stand for, and yes, that you're going to hear about them, having a more irreverent, playful strategy when it comes to their voice, but also the things that they stand for as an organization as well, including inclusion, hockey is for everyone, and work in the community, and overall just how they work across the organization, across social, across digital, across community, across game presentation. Every fan touch point, they embody that New Jersey fan, that their attitude, their values, and it's really cool to hear how a brand really does go well beyond the social feeds, and you're going to learn a lot from Chris. So listen up, tremendous conversation with Chris Wescott of the New Jersey Devils. Right back with today's guest, and I am so psyched. I mean, heck, we could have just been recording the last 10, 15 minutes just us chatting, because I've already learned a lot from him. You're going to learn a lot from him today. My guest on the podcast today is Chris Wescott. He is the Senior Manager of Content Strategy for the New Jersey Devils. And welcome to the podcast today, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And like you said, we could have recorded the first 10, 15 minutes. It's always good to chat content with someone who's as knowledgeable about it. And I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to this.
Really like to pick your brain. You have a lot of great experience and you're doing great things with the Devils now. But tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background, how you got started in the space, your stops along the way, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Yeah, so kind of all started for me. Actually, we'll start front. This is going to be a long story, so I apologize. But I started I wanted to be a doctor, so I started in pre-med. And I got that 8 a.m. advanced biology for majors class. And let's just say that's not for me. So I was walking down the halls of my school and my university, and I saw that there was a job opening for sports reporter for the school newspaper. And I'm like, hey, I love sports, and I've always thought I would get into sports someday and do something. Let's give it a try. And, from there, it just it was crazy. It was, 0 to 60 like that. It was, doing the sports writing, and then all of a sudden I'm promoted to sports editor. And now I have a team of sports reporters underneath me, and I'm doing the layouts of the sports section. And then from there, I'm taking broadcast classes, centered around sports media. And, then I'm getting asked hey, you've got a pretty good voice. Would you like to do the radio station? And so that I started doing that and podcasting. And then all of a sudden it's do you want to start doing play-by-play? And so I started doing play-by-play, and then it all kind of evolved into, now do you want to be on camera? And then becoming the sports director for our school news station. And then it just kept moving, and I just kept trying new things and new mediums and kind of all doing it all together. And then got lucky enough where, I'm getting towards the end of my college career, and the Oklahoma City Barons hockey team moved into Oklahoma City. And I literally, the first day they announced it, went on their website, which was still had the under construction on it. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget, there was just a general email, and I just sent them a general email and said, look, I'm in communications and content. I would love to come work with you guys as an intern. And, a few days later, I heard back from their PR director, Josh Evans, shout out, gave me my start in sports as an intern in the communications department. And from there, got exposure to all things communications, social media, writing and editing for the website, some on-camera stuff, filled in on color commentary for our radio from time to time. And they were the affiliate with the Edmonton Oilers. And so the Oilers crew would come down and shoot some prospect coverage every once in a while in Oklahoma City. So I became really good friends with their digital content team, and right place, right time. And they ended up having an opening for a writer and content specialist, and they called me. And I like to say I got the call up to the NHL. They offered me a job, and I jumped at the chance. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we moved up to Alberta. Wow. It was a big change. Yeah. And I worked there for about 5 seasons, evolved into their head writer, head of editorial. And then from there, I decided, you know what, I want to run my own content team. I want to run my own content strategy. So I had an opportunity to move to Chicago and work for the Blackhawks for a year as their manager of content. I wanted to kind of spread my wings and kind of separate myself from the Oilers. And the funny thing is, again, right place, right time. My boss from the Oilers got a job with the Devils. Mm-hmm. And, I'd only been with Chicago for a year. It was a very, very difficult decision to leave because I loved it so much. And I had a lot of freedom with the website, and we were doing great things. And that team over there with Chicago was very, very talented. But for me, it was like I had an opportunity to work for a boss who I really care about as a person, who helped me along the way, and to start a content team from scratch, because they didn't have a content team at the time. The Devils didn't. They had one camera person reporting outside of content. There was no department. So he was going to build that department from scratch. And that's what we've done since 2019. I was his first hire, and we've really reshaped and imagined what content is for the New Jersey Devils. And that's been a lot of fun. So, just a little bit about myself and my background for the Devils. What I do is, the social media departments report into me, but really my primary job is to look at our numbers, look at our strategy, find efficiencies, get our department resources to do the job better, report how our performance metrics are doing to the executive teams, and kind of really help shape the innovation of our digital content. So I work really closely with all of our external departments, partnerships, general marketing and brand marketing. I work really closely with ticketing, as well as some other departments, when we just kind of try and utilize content as a way to tell our story as a whole versus just covering the team. It's telling the brand journey. It's telling, the stories about these players to help sell tickets and stuff like that. So, do a little bit of everything. You've seen probably Devils fans listening to this. You've seen me on camera too. I still do that every once in a while. Probably not as much this season. But I've really just enjoyed this journey, and I'm excited about the future of the New Jersey Devils. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into all things Devils. You guys really do a good job of using content to reflect the goals of all your departments, and really it does feel like a very cohesive organization story. And I definitely want to pick your brain about the Devils, but I want to go back a little bit too about how you came up in this, because you kind of, whether it was intentionally or not, you developed that versatile skill set like seemingly overnight. Like, okay, I got the writing, now I got the on camera, and I got the strategy a little bit, and then you went right to that team side right after college. And did you kind of know what you were going for? Or were you like, okay, back when you and I were in college, like it was like, okay, if you want to get into broadcasting, you go work for this ABC affiliate in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, and then you work your way up. Or if you go for a newspaper gig, or if you go for and social media was burgeoning then, but not really a big thing then. So tell me like what that decision process was like for you. Like, okay, I'm going to go team side, and then how that evolved with your own core skill set to being like, okay, this is where I want to focus.
I think it came from me wanting to be different. I think I was fully expecting for me to take one of those weekend sports anchor jobs. In fact, I had a job offer in San Angelo, Texas, and I believe, I don't want to misquote it, but I think it was like an $18,000 a year job plus overtime. It was one of those, first market, work really hard, and try and get out of that market within a year or two, kind of a job. And I had that offer, and I was just like, well, this is what all my peers are doing. This is what everyone in broadcasting is kind of doing. Like, this could be, stepping stone for me. And I just didn't want that. I was like, look, I've done more than just anchoring and shooting and editing. And weekend sports anchor job, it's not going to give me the kind of flexibility and versatility to my job that I really want. And so I started really asking myself, what do you want to do with your life? And I still didn't know at the time, but I think I enjoyed working for the Barons so much that I wanted to make that a full-time gig. And I was willing to do really anything to get that. So I started off like a lot of people in sports. They couldn't pay me full-time in the minors just to jump right in and do communications. So I had to sell season tickets. And that's how I started. So I would sell season tickets during the week. And then on the weekends for the big games, I would be doing communication stuff.
Wow.
And then it started kind of evolving to where my nights were communication stuff. And then it started to evolve. Well, okay, you're only selling tickets like 3-4 days a week. And the other time you're doing this. And then eventually it was like, you're too important on the communications and content side. We need you to focus fully on here, come report into marketing and do that. So, I mean, for me, I knew that I had an option to go the traditional route. And for me, I wanted to do something different. And I think back on that decision and I realized that I couldn't have planned that any better because it allowed me to diversify my skill set even more than I already had. I learned everything. I mean, I was editing TV commercial spots at 2-3 in the morning and sending them to our local affiliates. I'll never forget. Sorry, we're going off track here, but I like this story. I'll never forget. I was editing. We had a mistake. I didn't misspell anything or anything in the TV spot, but we were changing a promotion on a night. Mm-hmm. And it was going out to our affiliate that next morning. Like it was going to start running at 6 a.m. So I had to drive from home to the office, open it up myself, go in and work at 3 a.m. on this TV spot to get it out to our affiliates in time for the 6 a.m. broadcast. And so I'm doing it. I'm like rendering them out, and then my computer's like crashing, and I'm like, of course, I'm freaking out. And the owner of the team walks in at 3 a.m. because he had been out with his wife. They went to a gala, and then he had to run in and get something from his desk because I think he was going somewhere for the weekend and he needed his laptop or something. So he comes in like really late, and he's like, I thought someone broke in. Like, what are you doing here? And I hadn't really talked to him that much. He's the owner of the team, and I was an entry-level person. And I was like, well, we had to get our TV spots to KFOR in time. And, I was the only one that could edit them. So I came in and did it. And he was like, what's your favorite beer? And I was like, I don't know, like whatever it was. And he's like, okay. So then the next day I come into work in the morning, I got it all done, come back in and at 9 a.m. or whatever it was. And there's a case of beer sitting on my desk with a note from the owner. And he would take me aside later on, and he became kind of a mentor to me, Bob Funk Jr. Mm-hmm. And he came up to me and he was like, you need to tell people what you're doing a little bit more often, because nobody in this company would have known that you were here at 3 a.m. if I hadn't walked in randomly. And like that kind of stuff, like you need to tell people like what you're doing. And that always kind of stuck with me. And, that was a moment when I realized that it was frustrating to be there doing that, but I still kind of loved it. And so I realized that content for a team was something I wanted to keep doing. So sorry, off track a little bit. I just really like that story.
No, it's a powerful story. I mean, it definitely hits home for me. Like I can remember being a lot of nights being the last person out of the arena, walking to my car and yeah, feeling exhausted, but also like a little bit of like, this is it. Like, this is cool. Like hell yeah. I'm the last one, the first one in, the last one out, whatever you want to say. So that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another small thing, then we'll get to the strategy part of this discussion for sure. But this is too much fun. Is picking hockey. I know I kind of fell into hockey a little bit organically myself. I grew up a fan of a lot of sports, hockey being one of them. And I think a lot of students coming up or young people in the sports space think about, okay, I don't want to be in this sport, so I can't take this job, or I want to eventually get to this sport. And we see a lot of cross-pollination as well, because a lot of skills do transfer a lot. So what was your thought process like with choosing hockey and then going from there to the Blackhawks, as opposed to whatever, NBA, MLB, whatever you want to talk about? So tell me about that decision for you.
Yeah, I think it all started for me when, like I said, one day one of my professors was like, hey, the club hockey team needs a play-by-play broadcaster. And you've done like football, you've done basketball, you've done baseball. Like, would you want to try hockey? And I actually am from Rochester, New York originally. So I was a big Amerks fan growing up, big Sabres fan growing up. it wasn't my favorite sport. I'll always be a football fan first. But for me, it was like, okay, I know this sport. Sure, I'll go give it a try. And the first broadcast was a disaster. I was using football terminology. It was so fast, and it's club hockey, but it was so fast compared to like a football game, a D2 football game. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I couldn't get the names. I didn't have anything. I was mispronouncing things. So that second broadcast, I came back. First off, they asked me if I wanted to come back. And part of me was like, no. And then I was like, you know what? I want to come back, but I'm going to do it right this time. So I came back like 2 hours early, like earlier than I already was, came in, went and visited with the visiting team, got their pronunciations from their head coach, asked him a few questions about who to look out for, stuff like that. Took all my notes, took like some pointers from one of the hockey players on the team that I work for of like what I should be saying in certain, instances, when I should pause, that kind of thing. And went up and did the next broadcast, and it was so much better. And I just loved it so much. And I was like, I'm going to do this. So I did it for several years. And I think that rekindled my love for hockey a little bit. Just so fast and so fun. And the Barons opportunity happened so organically after that. So I think I kind of just fell into hockey full time.
Yeah.
But that was probably the earliest I figured that I wanted to be in hockey. The organic transition to the Blackhawks and now the Devils has just been, those are my contacts. Those are the people I know. Those are the people that know me. Those are the people who know my work. So to me, it's been easy to stay in hockey, and I haven't really, branched out that much. Not to say I won't in the future, but as it stands today, it's just been, opportunity has been in hockey for me, and that's the way it's continued.
Totally, and it is the best sport in person for sure. So like, we don't need to talk about that. Definitely,
it is, yes. But I think football is made more for television. Totally. Hockey in person is the experience of having a beer and sitting on the glass. Or my favorite place to sit is in the nosebleeds, because you can see everything happen, kind of at once, and you're a little bit removed from the ice. And I love being able to see plays happen in advance of a pass, and you're like, and you can kind of see it form in front of you. So that's probably where I like enjoying hockey the most. But yeah, I would say it's the fastest sport. It's got physicality. It's got skill, finesse. It's just so much fun.
Hell yeah. So tell me, you start out with the Oilers, and after being at the Barons, and where are we in terms of the type of content that teams think they should be producing? Is it most just glorified press releases at this point? Are we doing practice coverage? And are you guys trying to be very AP style and have my chest out and my chin up right now, but very proper? Or is there a little bit of like a little bit of a voice or personality into it? Like how did that evolve during your time with the Oilers, and what was that like when you first started out?
I think when I first started, it was like Twitter had just launched, Instagram was just launching. I feel like I remember it being like a lot of experimentation and a lot of AP style, a lot of press release style, very tone dry. And I think it evolved over time. Like while I was there, where we started telling different feature stories, and we started doing more live streaming, and we started doing more character and personality driven content. And I think over time, it kind of just completely evolved to now we're reaching people in different mediums with immediacy. We have to be cognizant that all of the media is trying to be first, but we need to be accurate. And we not only need to be accurate, we need to have layered content plans. So it's not just a press release, it's a press release in a one-on-one, or a press release of one-on-one in a mini documentary, a press release in a raw interview lined up, or whatever it may be. And I think that's kind of how it evolved. Before it was just like straight line, like get the news out and whatever, and here's some ticket messaging. And now it's evolved to feed the content beast. And it really did evolve over the first 3-4 years that I was with Edmonton to where it is today, which is a constant flow of content and information.
And how much of that was getting a little bit of buy-in from PR, a little bit of buy-in from team operations, of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, or this is how we want to talk now? Like, is there even still today a little bit of cognizance or resistance to, not necessarily resistance, but at least cognizance of saying, hey, we're going to be, this is who we are. This is our personality. This is kind of content we're going to have. And if there's a transaction that's coming, it's valuable for us as an organization to know that that's coming, so we can properly activate against it. So what was it like with working with PR, with team ops, and even going through today?
I think it's all dependent on the club that you work for. I mean, there are some that are very lock and key, very prestigious, and very, we don't do anything to harm the brand and the shield. And this is who we are. And our players are on lockdown. They're 100% focused on winning hockey games or football games or whatever it may be. And then you're going to have some teams that are like, look, we got to punch above our weight class a bit. We've got to be a little bit different. We got to be innovative. We got to push the envelope. And I think it's all about, you need to have a vision and a North Star, and for your brand specifically. And then you kind of build your content plan around that, and you kind of build your marketing around that. And you kind of build your voice around that. And I think that it's just different for every club, and there's different levels of buy-in. You're going to work for young digital professionals that are listening to me now, you're going to work for some organizations where you put something out there and you're really proud of it, and you're going to get a message from PR, or you're going to get a message from somebody that's like, hey, that's not in line with what we're trying to do. You're going to have moments where they're pushing the envelope and they're challenging you to be a little bit more innovative and do stuff differently. It's all dependent on where you're working, what the structure is, and what the North Star is. And even if your organization has a North Star and a brand voice or a brand identity, because some organizations don't. And then it's on you as a digital media professional to really try and find out what that is, and work with the right people to make sure that you've created something that now is kind of a handbook for how you approach digital content and social media and all that. So I really do think it's different across the board. I've worked with PR departments in my career that are very lock and key, very, we don't do that, very, straight lace. And I've worked with PR departments that are like, what do you got next for me? Like, what's next, and telling us things before they happen, and really kind of getting into it, or texting you late at night, hey, I love that post, or hey, I love that story. So I think it's just different. And there is no blueprint, for every single organization, because it starts at the top with the executive teams and how willing they are to have talented individuals kind of weigh in on certain decisions, or if they've already made a brand document and a North Star that you're going to follow when you get there. So I think it's just completely different depending on clubs.
No, it's really well stated. And I think that's something that anyone can take away when they're looking at, oh, this club did this or this club did that, and this club's so much better than this club, and you just don't know what the internal structure looks like, who's pushing back, who's not. There's so many variables that I think we remind ourselves all the time, but people still forget it.
Some of your colleagues' best ideas probably never saw the light of day. Totally. And so for anyone in digital media to judge other presences, it doesn't make any sense, because you don't know what's going on inside that building. You don't know what the approval process is. Like, you could have like a killer launch video or announce video or something, and you have it, but you're waiting on the approvals, and then the moment comes and it passes and you can't use it anymore just because it didn't get approved in time. So like, you don't know what's happening inside those organizations. Every organization is different. And so I completely agree with that. You don't know what's going on there.
I want to double click on that North Star really quickly, because that's a great way to frame this discussion. And you've been on some clubs over your career where there has been turnover, where there's been new head coaches or new GMs, and thinking specifically around hockey ops. And when you find that North Star, when you find that personality or who that brand wants to be, how much of it is also a North Star for hockey ops? And then when that changes, how much is it like, hey, this is who we are, versus a whatever, I'm going to throw a very divisive name like a Lou Lamoriello saying, nope, that's not how we talk anymore, guys. So tell me about that relationship and that, especially as turnover occurs.
Yeah, I think it depends on who's spearheading it with the club, right? Like if it's like the ownership has a certain North Star, or they've challenged their CEO to set the tone, it's going to be a little bit different. And that tone is probably going to survive past, GMs or hockey ops or whoever it may be coming in and wanting to change things a little bit. I just want to go back to your point there. Is like, there's going to be turnover and stuff, but the challenge is for the creative types and the people that have come up with the North Star, the people that abide by it, to find ways to convince, people that this is the right path. And honestly, like, if you have a good North Star and it's working, then turnover shouldn't matter, because that's the brand identity, right? So that's what the shield represents. That's the tone. That's the voice. It survives past different regimes changes and stuff like that. So, and also the whole point of having like a brand identity and voice is so that you can survive turnover at the creative level too. Because let's say I have a very talented social media person and they go get another job and they become director of social media somewhere. Congratulations to you. I'm happy that you've evolved. The social media presence shouldn't change.
Totally.
Because it's not Joe. It's not his voice. It's the Devils. It's the Oilers. It's the Stars. It's not their voice. You know, they may leave their fingerprints on it in terms of creativity and ideas and innovation, but the brand voice, the brand identity, the North Star, the content that you're producing should be able to survive through regime changes and staffing changes and turnover. So that's just something that I hold true. And I think that's very important, because if not, you notice the social changes from year to year. And a lot of that's because of, you know, these companies, they maybe hire someone fresh out of college to run social media because they haven't evolved with the times, right, to know that you have to invest in those types of positions. So that's where you're going to get a little helter skelter in terms of brand voice. And then you're going to see things that don't necessarily make sense coming from that team, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And I mean, you see it all the time, and it's a great insight. Tell me a little bit about how, like, you work really much in the trenches now of strategy, of what our content plan is going to look like, and you've gotten some good experience over the years of being on teams with undulating storylines or, you know, performances and expectations. And so tell me, especially whether it's with the Oilers, the Blackhawks, or the Devils, how much of it does need to pivot or need to change based on performance, or based on at least how much performance deviates from expectations? Like, hey, we expect to be a playoff team, now we're a seller. Or, hey, we're going to market the heck out of Taylor Hall, but oops, no, not anymore. Like, how much does that content strategy, like, all of a sudden there's a pivot point where, like, hey guys, we need to rethink this?
Yeah, I think there's always internal dialogue and cooperation with multiple departments across the board and how you're messaging certain things. I think that your content plan, the core of it, kind of stays the same. There are certain things that you're very repetitive with. There's certain, areas of your content plan that have a little bit more flexibility to be tailored to certain types of storylines, and what things you want to push the brakes on and what things you want to push forward with. That being said, like, you try and have your core and you try and work that core. You try and make your plan and work the plan. And then the flexibility comes in where, if something really good happens, you are mobile enough and talented enough in your content team to jump on that and amplify that as a bigger moment. Yeah. You can weather the peaks and valleys of engagement because you have a baseline of traffic that you've built up through, good team coverage or good personality content or a great social voice, whatever it may be. So you're able to kind of weather those valleys when the team's not performing very well. I mean, we've been very proud on the Devils side. Over the last 3 years, we've evolved from 12th in aggregate public engagement rate to 11th last year and then 7th this last season. So we've gone up despite the team having flat performance. And I think a big reason for that, on top of brand voice that our fans really enjoy and engage with, is that we've been steady with our content plan. We always provide hockey coverage every single practice, every single pregame, every single postgame. You could find every single interview that you could possibly want. We're constantly telling stories, feature stories. So fans, they know, like, we are going to promote the positive stories heavier than we do the negative stories. But we do provide a base of down the middle coverage as the core of our content plan. And when you add that to fun social media content and brand voice, you have the recipe for a team that can weather flat performance on the ice. I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's what I was trying to get at.
Oh, that's good. It leads me to think a little follow-up here of, because that one of those last points you made about that objective coverage of, like, hey, if we're not playing well, we're not going to pretend like it's not happening. Like, right. I see some teams that still are very much like, hey, we're going to try to look at from as much rose-colored glasses as we can, whereas others will might have even parts of their team that, like, actively criticize what's going on and talk badly about the team. So, like, how important is that to establish some sort of, I guess, neutrality or objectivity, I guess, is more important to say it, and in establishing trust with your fans, where they want to go to you for content first, so they know they're going to get it straight, versus going to a beat writer where that might be more objective.
Yeah, I think that the first thing you need to do is be honest and understand that fans, they're smart. They know when you're trying to cover up bad performances, or when you're trying the illusion of look over here while you're pulling a card over here. And I think that for content teams that lean into like hockey editorial or team coverage, you have to provide a baseline of neutrality, objectivity, as you said, where you have, we run every single interview raw, start to finish. There's nothing hidden in those. Fans can get all the quotes that they want. Media can get all the quotes from them. And that's like a big base of our coverage. And then from there, like our game previews and recaps are straight line down the middle. There's not really anything that's over the top positive or over the top negative there. You're giving them the bare bones of facts and information and allowing them to create their own storylines. I think where it differs when you're a club is you have to be poised to capture the big moments that are positive for your brand in a different way than you would capture like the big negative moments. And so for us, if, we call up a young player, so the Devils, perfect example, the Devils are a young team, one of the youngest teams in the league. And that can actually be a positive. The wins haven't come over the last couple of years, but these young players are getting a lot of experience. So we celebrate those as big hockey moments with, big feature story, a sit down interview with a guy who's getting his first call up or scores his first NHL goal. And I think that's where it's really important to now dial up that style of content. But I think you should always present that neutral case as well. I think that's how you build up your base traffic, because they know they're going to get that every time, even a loss. I'm going to get that. That's going to be available to me. I think that's super important.
Yeah, and that fan connection is not going to be as strong if they don't trust you, and that's right. That's a big part of it, I think. And you touched on something there too. I know that you and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Is that mix of hockey X's and O's or hockey content versus pure entertainment or more personality driven content or more I guess feature stories, for lack of a better term. How have you seen that pie evolve in your career? And is it going to keep on shrinking? And there might always be some part of it that's like, hey, here's what here's the new line rushes, here's our new PK. Like how have you seen that evolve, and is there a stopping point, and is part of it more valuable because it's pulling in more casual fans?
Yeah, I think winning is the greatest shot of adrenaline to traffic and engagement.
That's marketing strategy.
Yeah, and I think like having that base of hockey coverage, sports coverage, is important in that when the team is good, they're going to start coming to you for that. The casual hockey fans that are looking for a new team or that become interested in you because you're winning are now going to latch onto that. I think that the personality content has gotten so much more important over the last few years in terms of marketing the star players, marketing the individual personalities on your team, showing off that the team is endearing in some ways. And I think so the pie, I think, has shrunk a little bit. But for perfect example is, our social coordinator came to me a few seasons ago and was like, why are we still live tweeting games, for example? Mm-hmm. And we had like a pretty significant discussion. We have, a couple of in-house reporters, Amanda Stein being one of them. And, she live tweets games and we oftentimes retweet her a lot. So like, why are we tweeting almost the exact same content as her? Why don't we focus on celebrating the hockey moments of the game, fulfilling sponsor obligations, whatever it may be? Yeah. And the live tweeting is going to be from her. It's going to be from fan accounts. It's going to be from blogs. It's going to be from our local beat reporters. It's going to be from Sportsnet. It's all of that is kind of coming from other accounts. So what can we provide that's different? So whether that's being in the tunnel while the players are coming out for a different angle, whether that's being on the bench for warm-ups or doing something unique with POV glasses during a game, or having a different angle of a goal celebration, or different types of highlights that you're taking from the broadcast, we can provide something a little bit different that you're not seeing on all these other accounts. So that's where like you evolve kind of your strategy a little bit, because you have those conversations where before it was just a given. We're live tweeting the game. We're the team. We're going to live tweet the game. So I think that it's evolved from that, where it's like, Fox News, get the stuff out to now, okay, let's give the fans a little bit something different on our feeds. So that's like an example of what you're trying to think, talk about when you talk about the pie shrinking and changing and evolving. I think it's completely changed.
And there's something in there too about as you alluded to, like differentiating what they're already getting from all these other sources, and even to your point earlier of like we may not break the news. We're like, Elliot Friedman's going to break the news or whoever, but we can do something more with it. We can have a more robust content plan. We can tell you the behind the scenes of it. We can have a sit down with this guy or whatever it might be. And like, there's something to that. And I had this revelation early on in my career, like, hey, no matter what we do, we're not going to beat the scoops because we got to wait till it goes official. And so what can we give fans that they're not getting elsewhere? And I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Of let's give them a reason to follow us because we're giving them something they can't get anywhere else.
It makes them endear themselves to you a little bit more. Creates brand loyalty, brand affinity, because they know that they're coming to you for something that they're not getting elsewhere. So while the hockey coverage is super important and has been for a long time, and it provides base coverage, and then when the team is good, you'll take off. I think it's super important that you provide a service that's different than what they're getting from all the other accounts out there.
Yeah. And it helps them love the team win or lose, regardless of record as well throughout. Chris, a few more minutes left here with Chris Wescott. He is the senior manager of content strategy for the New Jersey Devils. I want to talk. This part of what I was so excited to talk to you about today is I've been following the Devils for a long time, but particularly over the last few years, I've tangibly noticed a shift in tone and personality, and it's really taken off. And it looks like the team is almost, I don't want to say doubled down, but has really just strengthened it even more, and the fans really love it. So tell me, take me back to what that conversation was like early on of saying, hey, this is who we're going to be now, and what it was like experimenting with it and then saying, hey, this is working. So take me through that whole discussion of the philosophy and as well as the, actually how it actually plays out day to day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and we do almost everything by committee approach. Like our social media team does not operate in a bubble. We operate alongside marketing, brand strategy. Everything comes together for these moments. And for us, it was super important where we kind of took a step back. We realized that maybe we were under-resourced in a few areas. Maybe we were over-resourced in other areas. And we were kind of scrambling, and we were just trying to like put out social media content. And we all kind of came together and we're like, we need more of a North Star. We need a guiding principles of our brand and what we are. And, that came right from the top of marketing and came from brand and social. And we all kind of sat in a room and started talking about, okay, what are the Devils? Who are the Devils? Who are we going to be 5 years from now? Who are we going to be 10 years from now? And, there were a lot of meetings and discussions that went on with this evolution of our brand and how the voice should not only complement who the brand is, but really work in tandem with it to grow brand affinity. So, we determined that we're the only pro sports team in New Jersey that claims New Jersey as its own. You have a lot of New York teams that claim New Jersey. You have some teams like the Red Bulls that do both, but New York's in their name. So for us, we wanted to lean into that. We are Jersey's team, and there's a certain pride and toughness that comes with New Jersey. And I've learned that over, 4 years here, and I love living in New Jersey. I think it's awesome. And I think it's right up my alley. And I think we wanted to reflect that pride, that toughness, that roll off your shoulders kind of mentality in our voice. And there's kind of an attitude and a bit of a swagger with it. And it's not necessarily that we're Wendy's, where we're roasting people every single day, but we're waiting for it. Like if you come at us, like we'll swing back. We're not going to take it from anybody. We're going to dish it back. And I think that plus a little bit of irreverent humor really kind of blends together with that attitude and toughness to create who the Devils are on social media. So like, we don't always have to roast fans and trolls, but we got our fans are asking for it. They're tagging people and they're tagging us and stuff. And we don't always have to do it, but like we're literally the Devils. So if we want to take a shot, we can. And like, it's okay. And if you don't like us, we don't like you either. And there's a kind of this real authenticness to that voice when it's coming from the Devils brand. It just seems right, black and red and Devils and New Jersey. And so there's like this charismatic wittiness to it that is very endearing to the people of New Jersey. And we've seen just the engagement rate the ranking in the NHL, the follower growth on certain platforms that we've identified as our growth platforms, especially like Instagram, where our brand voice really shines a bit, has been just so great the last couple of years. And a lot of that, I think, is because we have our North Star and we're using it on a day-to-day basis. And it allows us to amplify big hockey moments in a different way. I mean, perfect example is drafting Luke Hughes. We were able to get onto SportsCenter because of, the Step Brothers meme that we did and a few other posts that we had, because it was just perfect for what the Devils are, what that moment was, bringing someone else into the Jersey family. So, I think like it's a lot of people, a lot of work, a lot of debate, a lot of ideas. But now that we have that North Star, we know what we're building towards and what our brand voice should sound like, which is fun.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great to hear the numbers, stories as well, back it up, especially over the years. In the earlier time when you're just kind of dipping your toe into something new or a different tone or a different way to post on social, how do you know what's working then? Like, are you just paying attention to the replies, to the comments, and not everyone's gonna love everything, of course. Like, you're gonna have fans who hate it, you're gonna have fans who love it. So like, how do you know when you're trying something new, dipping your toe in, that this is resonating? Let's keep going.
I mean, I think like a lot of it is first identifying if that is within our brand voice and kind of the direction that we want to go. We're not going to try something new if it's completely in stark contrast to what we're trying to get across with that. And so it may not hit right away or resonate right away, but if it's building up to that brand voice, then it's a positive, right? It's because it's adding to the mix of what we're trying to do that amplifies that voice. And maybe it doesn't work today, but it's laid the groundwork that maybe it'll work some other time. So I think fear of failure is a thing that plagues a lot of people. It doesn't with us. We're okay with if something didn't perform as well as we thought it would, because as long as we know that we're building towards, it's part of that brand voice, that identity, then we know that it's a success, that we've found something that's fit into that. That being said, like, it's always great when you get like, I wish this other team was as, open as this, or right. I love this. I'd love to see someone else do this, or, like blah, blah. I think like that's kind of when you start to see those comments, the people on our ground, our coordinators and our managers, like they're kind of looking at that as a success story. And we measure like engagement rate per impression as one of our success stories as well for certain posts. So like maybe it didn't reach as many people as we wish it did, but the people that saw it really liked it and really engaged with it. Yeah. I think like that's where we start to formulate wins. So maybe it's like, wow, that only got like 150,000 impressions, but the engagement rate per impression on that was like 13% or something like that. Wow, that's really high. That's a good post for us. So I think that's kind of how you measure it with the hard stats, but you also measure it with the fact that you're trying to build something and you're trying to ladder up to what your brand identity is. So that's a win for us.
Yeah, and you can tell whether from a sentiment perspective or just literally reading the replies, reading the comments oftentimes, to your point, that's resonating. And when they say like, oh, I'm not a Devils fan, but I love this account, or give the Devils admin a raise, this is awesome, or whatever, that kind of stuff, it does have meaning, even if it's just one reply or one, it equals more than that one, it oftentimes.
Our social team loves that.
Oh, it's
they
great.
Love that. They love to read those replies.
And how much does it, or how much should it as well, just like cross-pollinate throughout the organization? Like, hey, now our sponsor content might have a little bit of a different vibe, or our in-arena content can also be that sort of irreverent and tough but fun aspect. So like when something works on social, like a Step Brothers meme may not work everywhere, but when a general North Star is working well, how does it tend to play out across the rest of the organization and all the marketing messages and partner activations and such?
Yeah, I think it does filter out. It should filter out in almost everything that you do. I think like there's certain things that are a little bit different. Like we have a lot of partners that want to sponsor our win memes, for example, and we just don't think they come out. We just don't think that those would come out as authentic. Right. As if we slapped a partner logo on those, and we wanted to just kind of, remain within our brand voice and not necessarily be sponsored content. Like that. So there's certain times where you kind of hold off on integrating it, but I think for the most part, like game pres, everything, should have that tone to it because you're the Devils, and everything that you do should have that tone to it. And it's not just. I do want to dial back just a little bit on the brand voice too, because I think that there's like some people just think like, oh, the Devils are like rude or like they're always roasting or something like that. But like, if you see like what we do in the community and like the amount of social justice initiatives, the amount of helping different underserved parts of our community, and what we do for Hockey is for Everyone and all those initiatives, it's also welcoming people into our family. And once you're in our family, you're family. And we will be there for you and we'll protect you and we'll rise to the occasion. And you're a part of us. You're a part of our tribe. And I think like that's part of the brand voice as well. And I think that when you talk about it integrating into everything you do, you see it in what we do in the community. You see it in our game presentation. You see it in how Hockey is for Everyone moments show up on our social feeds and in our initiatives and the money that we raise and what we do for our Devils Youth Foundation. So I think it does resonate in almost everything that you do. It is who you are as a brand, and I think that that's important.
No, I think that's really well put to see that play out and to see it play out with the Devils organization as well, for sure. All right, I'm like looking at my notes, going, okay, I want to get in this, and this, but we're running short on time a little bit. So I guess just tell me a little bit about like. Well, you live in the metrics. You live with a lot of the strategy now, and really trying to interpret, maybe at times not overinterpret. So when you're looking at content performance or strategy performance overall, how do you marry metrics? How do you marry different platforms? Like what are those KPIs that really lead you to say, okay, this is what we should do? Or when you're looking at different platforms, saying, hey, impressions might mean more here, but here we're looking more at clicks or engagements. So how does all that play out? And I know that's a super loaded question, so take it however makes most sense for you. But tell me, take me inside that strategic mind of yours.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the content is and what you're trying. What's the goal of that content? What are you trying to achieve with that content? So like, game day entertainment style content is going to be different than certain partner pieces. Is going to be different than certain good that you're trying to do in the community. So you're going to measure those a little bit differently from what you do. We track everything that goes out on social media, everything that goes out on our website, of course. But I think that how you measure success is going to show up differently depending on what it is. So like, for example. This is how I think about things, but like our Devils draft party, for example, you only have 1,000 invites, 1,000 tickets. It's a smaller venue, so you're only gonna have 1,000 people. So let's say them plus their family members makes 2,000-3,000 people that are hardcore in tune with that draft party.
Yeah.
But you have millions of followers across your entire digital ecosystem. You're a global brand, like because you're a hockey team. So your influence stretches out far beyond that. So the vast majority of your followers don't necessarily care or are in tune with your posts about your draft party, but it's still important because you're servicing the fans that are coming to that draft party. So, it's a hard line where you go, okay, well, this wasn't as successful as some of our other posts about the draft. It's because a wider audience cares more about the draft picks and stories about them versus the party that you had. So you have to find ways to communicate that to the people that it matters to the most. And explain to them, this is why. It's not that it wasn't it's not that it was a bad post. It's not that it was a bad party. It was an awesome party. It was killer. The fans that were there loved it. But when you only sell 1,000 tickets to something, the splatter spray technique of engagement and getting it out on every platform, it's not going to perform as well as some of your other posts. So I think it's about educating the key stakeholders on what success is based on certain platforms, whether or not you reach the right KPIs, whether or not you hit your mark. But it's so dependent on what type of content you're trying to get out there. Some of it, you're like, I just want it in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Others is we're targeting new fans that don't necessarily follow us right now. Yeah. So the impressions and the engagement rate might be a little bit lower, but we're targeting the future of our fan base. So this is why we're leading into this program. So that it's measuring success differently for that program versus something that services all of our current following, which is, they're all completely different, right? So I think that for me, you're looking at the numbers. You have to be able to read between the lines and understand why maybe something wasn't as successful, but was it successful for what we were trying to do with it? And I think that those are two different questions you have to ask yourself.
How close are we, or how can we get there in practice. I mean, I think overall at the end of the season, you're gonna look at oftentimes at the aggregate overall numbers, wherever those few KPIs may be. But you may also be able to say ideally like, yeah, the numbers were this, but did you know that our posts related to community relations went up by a ton in terms of engagement, or our sponsor content performed better? Like, can you get that granular when you're looking back on historical performance, or is it just such a daunting task that we're not there yet?
So I think for us at the Devils, we've done a really good job over the last couple of years where we tag every single post that goes out. And we have found that helps us year over year measure success against each other. So you said it perfectly there. It's like the success of community posts, for example. Well, if we're tagging all community posts, I can see that last season they performed below average in terms of engagement rate per impression. We made some tweaks in the post timing, the style of posts, and we've seen, a 20% gain in average engagement rate per impression on this type of post. So I think that we can get that granular now. I think that it's taken a little while to get to that point, and not every team has the same tools. So for us, we've grown that over the last 3 years, where we've grown our arsenal of resources and external vendors to be able to get to that point where we can really measure success against ourselves. And I think that that's super important, because success in the league is great, but there's a lot of outlying factors. If you're not winning games, or if other teams are winning more than you, teams are jumping up the standings, teams are doing things differently. Those are very innovative people working for those other teams as well. I think measuring success against yourself becomes more and more important, especially when, the performance on the ice or on the field, wherever it is in pro sports, has kind of flatlined a bit or is kind of steady. Yeah. And that helps you measure, like, okay, are we doing things internally correct? Like, are we kind of building on what we did last year? Are we building our strategy? And so when you can get granular and look at the individual statistics like that, I think that helps you tell your story a little bit better.
Love that. I'm like picturing that meme where it's like they don't know that my engagements in community relations posts went up by a ton last year. It just like, a single metric does not tell the whole story, depending on your goals, your resources. Like, they don't know that I increased my my Hispanic fan base this year. Like, there's so many little goals that social media and digital and content can help to accomplish. And if we just make it all about one single metric, it's not even getting close to telling the whole story, let alone accounting for record and all that.
Right.
Chris, I want to pick your brain some more. This has been so great. I've a billion more things that we can talk about, but we're going to have a little more fun in our one-timer segment. First episode shareable stat coming up right now. Such an incredible chat with Chris Wescott, Senior Manager of Content Strategy for the New Jersey Devils. Could really pick his brain all day. Just lots of good insight, really thoughtful in their approach, thoughtful in his insight. I love hearing about how they measure the success of their strategies and really look at content in a structured, organized way, so they're comparing apples to apples as much as possible. Just so much good insight there. And you're going to get some more tales and tidbits from Chris coming up in our one-timer segment. So stick around for that. But coming up first is our shareable stat. And this shareable stat comes from a well-publicized, you may have seen it, set of data from the Pew Research Center around teen social media usage. And, of course, among many stats that was in this report, one that made a lot of rounds and was getting a lot of discussion was that 95% of teens use YouTube. When asked about the social media networks that they use, 95% of teens, so ages 13 to 17 in particular, in this particular data point, use YouTube. It was the highest by far. Next up was TikTok with around 2/3, and Instagram right behind there. Facebook had seen the biggest drop in the last 8 years as this data shows. But again, the one we're focusing on in the shareable stat is 95% use YouTube. And yes, we are all very gung-ho on TikTok for good reason. It's growing quickly. There's a lot of great original creative content there and a new opportunity to reach new fans and grow your brand. But YouTube is old faithful, and yes, I'm not saying to forget about TikTok by any means, but don't sleep on YouTube. And many think of it as just a video dumping ground. Some organizations and teams have done a really good job of organizing playlists and really making it user-friendly for fans. If you talk to teens, if you talk to fans, a lot of them go to YouTube and spend a lot of time. That's where they sit back and watch long-form content. And yes, we talk about TikTok recently made headlines for its growing value as a search mechanism, as Google themselves said that TikTok is taking away search from them a little bit. But YouTube remains also a strong search place as well, a search platform. But when you think about YouTube and the relationship that certainly teens have, as the data point shows, but others as well. It's how can you turn it not just into a video dumping ground, but a way to have a true relationship with fans. So they're coming to see your videos. They're coming to your channel. They want to subscribe. They want to see what you're going to post next. TikTok is definitely a lot more discovery, and it's meant to be discovery. Whereas YouTube, you have a lot of teens that I've talked to, even in my own conversations, will go to YouTube with intent. So again, just a lot you can take away from this stat. 95% of teens use YouTube, according to the latest Pew Research study put out. So think about it, talk about it. Lots of stats out there, and they all lead to good conversation. More importantly, though, stick around for the one-timer segment as we talk more with Chris Wescott of the New Jersey Devils. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I am joined once again by Chris Wescott. He is the Senior Manager of Content Strategy for the New Jersey Devils. And Chris, you kicked ass in your interview. Are you now ready to shoot some one-timers?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's see how your shot looks these days. All right, number one, going back to college a little bit, tell me which sports team did best while you were there. Tell us about University of Central Oklahoma. Tell us what should we know about that school?
Div 2 school. And I think that if I remember correctly, they're very science-leaning school. I think they have one of the best criminal investigation and forensic science schools like in the nation. And also, I think they might be known for funeral services, like morgues and like medical examiner schools,
like 6 feet under or something.
yeah. I think like they changed over some of their colleges when like during CSI, when that was like super popular and stuff. Yeah. So I think like they started doing like forensic sciences and stuff like that. So I remember them being very like science and mathematics. And I'm biased, but our club hockey team, I mean, they won, nice. They're in the national championship picture for the ACHA quite often. And they play against teams that you would expect to be Div 1, but they're a higher up club team. And then of course their Div 2 basketball teams, soccer teams have always been strong, both men and women's. And I think like one of my favorite things was broadcasting the Div 2 regional tournament during like Div 2 like March Madness, and that was really fun. And those teams were really, really talented, really, really fun. So I would say like their football team, I mean, maybe it's better now, but when I was there, was not one of their primary sports. They were very, soccer and basketball heavy. And then of course, like the club hockey team as well.
Nice. That was perfect. Some fun facts, learned about the school, and I'm ready now. That's awesome. Sticking on the broadcasting theme, this is always a fun question. Tell me, who was your favorite sports broadcaster growing up? Who was that guy or gal you listened to a lot?
Doc Emmerich's the GOAT.
Hell yeah.
But Rick Jenneret's my childhood.
True.
He's amazing, and I'm so happy for him for retiring this past year. And everything the Sabres did for him content-wise, while we're talking about content, so classy. If someone from the Sabres is listening, you guys did a fantastic job. And then Gus Johnson, which is a little dark horse, but I was so sad when he stopped doing NFL games, and I think he just started doing NFL games again recently for Fox. But when I was growing up, when I was younger, I mean, he just made every play, whether it was a 2-yard run or a 50-yard Hail Mary, sound like it was the game on the line, and it was just so exciting. And so those would have to be my top 3.
I'm like in my head now trying to imagine Gus Johnson doing a hockey game, and it's wild.
I would die. I would think I would love that. Every moment of it, every second you're on the edge of your seat. I think he'd do a great job.
Oh, that's great. All right, number 3 for you. Tell me, going back to time with the Oilers, the most memorable story that you either wrote or produced or were part of there.
Yeah, I have a couple. Zach, I did a long form story. We called them Oilers In-Depth on Zach Cassian's battle with substance abuse. Him and I sat together for well over an hour, and he actually really, really opened up to me. I formulated the story kind of around his love for riding his motorcycle up and down the California coast, and how he used that as an escape when he thought his hockey career was over. And I think that him, fans will know him as like the toothy guy that gets into all the scraps and hits people and everything. But like when you listen to what he said about all that stuff, really made me see that the person kind of behind that personification of him. And I thought that was great. And then the other one was when Dave Semenko passed away. I got to write a story called, I believe I called it This Is Dave. And everyone else was writing stories about him being like Wayne Gretzky's bodyguard and like the toughest enforcer in the league. And I wanted to tell a different story. So I met his daughter at a coffee shop. And her and I, like, you know, really got into it and really talked about who he was off the ice. And I got a chance to tell a few stories of, you know, how he would watch like Disney movies with her. And, you know, I can't remember what the name of the movie was. It's the one with, oh no, it's the princess something, not Princess Bride, but like, what is her name? I can't remember. She's like the ugly duckling and she becomes a princess or something, whatever it was. He used to watch that with his daughter and he used to quote the movie, and it was very endearing, and it kind of told a different side of the story of one of the toughest, meanest son of a guns to play hockey. And it told a story of him as a big softie, and I really enjoyed writing that. That's
great. So something like that Zach Kassian story, I'm always curious, like, how does that come together? I've heard both sides. Sometimes it's the player saying, hey, and/or agent talking about it, like, hey, I want to tell the story. Other times, the player whatever, communications or PR hears about something and then talks about that. How's some of that come together at least for Zach Kassian?
Yeah, it started with like conversations with PR and like how I would tell the story and like questions I would ask, and vetting it through that. And then we had to wait a few days while we heard back from him, and he was kind of like on the fence about it. And I had already done some stories with him before, and so he knew who I was. And I told him, look, you'll get to read it before it goes out. Like, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm telling the story from the right perspective. And I don't want anything to get out that would harm you or your family in any way. And getting, you know, buy-in from PR, and they read it over and over again just to make sure. But I think like once that got vetted, there weren't ready. I remember being very proud because there weren't really many corrections to it. Not much changed from the story. And it got to the point where he came up the next week and like clapped me on the shoulder and was like, hey, I really appreciate that story. So awesome. I think it came together just through conversations, but it was definitely one of my favorite pieces I've ever written. It's called The Ride, if you ever want to read it.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely have to look that up. And I love the idea of players and teams really understanding there's a partnership here, that we can work together to tell a meaningful story that will, you know, hopefully help and or inspire a lot of people out there. And it really is that, you know, working together on something that you guys both want to see happen. It's cool to see that happen nowadays. All right, next up for you, I want to talk about players as well. Still, tell me the player you worked with throughout your entire career, who's just had the most outside personality, someone that you're like, this guy's too much fun.
Dougie Hamilton is great. He's got a great attitude. He loves it when we have new technology on the bench, new cameras and stuff like that. He's really interested in different things. So I would say he's on the Devils. He's probably one of the best. Pat Maroon is another one that really sticks out to me. Just a great guy to work with. He's super loud, fun, accountable. He'll do interviews after 5-0 losses the same way he'll do them after 5-0 wins. He's a winner. He's got multiple Stanley Cups now, and he's an emotional guy when it comes to his son. You know, just a huge personality, and he's a lot of fun to be around. And I think that every locker room needs a guy like that, and they're kind of hard to come by. So I would say Pat Maroon probably.
Love that. Some great answers there. Next up for you, Chris. This is an interesting one. Tell me, your number one like guiding principle or mantra when it comes to effective content in sports.
Fans first. Are the fans going to like it? I may like it, but are our fans going to like it? And does it funnel back to the voice that we've chosen for the fan base that we think resonates with them the most? So I think that sometimes, like, when you get overworked or in a bubble, content teams, like, they're producing content that they think is great, but it's not necessarily something that their fan base wants to see or is asking for. And I think so for me, it's fan first. And does it funnel back to that priority?
And if you close your eyes and picture a New Jersey Devil fan, do you have to picture different variations of that fan, or do you have is there enough of a North Star where you're like, okay, these are the primary traits of our fan base?
I think you have that North Star, you know, the primary traits. And the difference comes in where like you're trying to reach new fans and grow your fan base and grow the diversity of your fan base. I think that's where you kind of have a little bit more wiggle room, but as long as it all funnels back to who you are as a brand, what your identity is, I think that you could use that as your North Star, your guiding principles.
I like that. Next for you, Chris, this is something that anyone that's worked in hockey will relate to. Hockey players are full of cliches. We've all heard a lot of the same cliches in interviews. They're getting better. Certainly getting better. There's a lot more personalities out there now, several of whom are on the Devils. So tell me, when I say hockey player cliche, what's the first one that comes to mind? Feel free to list off here, but what comes to mind?
The very first one is we've got to play a full 60. I think I've heard that phrase 3,000 times over my career for the past decade. Almost after every single loss, you can count on someone in the locker room to be like, totally. We've got to learn to play a full 60. So.
Oh, there's so many. We got to get harder on the forecheck, or we got to work harder. We got to get on the body. Yeah, get pucks in deep. Oh, there's so many. I love it. Number 7. This is also a fun one. Tell me the most memorable game you've ever been at, whether it's for work or as a fan. Either one. Tell me the most memorable game.
Probably. It's a good one. Probably my first home playoff win when I worked for the Oilers. I got to do the walk-off interviews and I couldn't hear myself talk. And I think my first one was with Jordan Eberle. And I think we were walking out of the tunnel and he was like, I can't hear you. So we had to walk back into the tunnel so I could tell him the question and say, and then I'm going to nod and I'm going to ask you this question. And then we had the 2 questions and then we went back out and we did the interview. Wow. And I remember it being just so loud. And like, I was like shaking. I had so much adrenaline after doing a 2-question interview, which I couldn't tell you what he said. I couldn't hear it. The fans were going nuts. And it was a pretty cool experience. So I would say that's probably my most memorable game. And it's because of that moment.
That's awesome. I'm pantomiming the interview once you're back outside the tunnel. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Chris, it's time for our food question. A little bit different take on the food question this time, but this is going to be a fun one. You've been to a handful of arenas, I'm sure, around the league. So tell me the arena with the best press meal and then the arena with the best press box food.
Okay. I think it's both Chicago.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. Like they feed you like 3 meals in the press box and they're all like really good. It's like, mac and cheese night where it's build your own mac and cheese and they have like lobsters and like, build your own like Italian dip and like, beef, whatever, like beef dip. And they've got like, it's just high quality food too. Like, and I think that almost everybody in hockey media will tell you Chicago is number 1. It's insane. And then like down in the meal room, besides Chicago, I like LA always does a pretty good job. For some reason, when we were there with the Oilers, there was always an ice cream station, and then there was always like either Chinese or Mexican, and it was good. And then the other one is Carolina. They do barbecue. There's a full pulled pork roasted pig every time I've gone there for dinner, and it's just so good.
Oh man. I can listen to arena food reviews all day. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Number 9 for you. Tell me of the Devils player with the best social media and why. The current Devils player who we should all go follow on social media because they rock.
Well, I mean, PK is no longer a Devil, but he'd be the low hanging fruit. Like he's got like the best presence. But I'll tell you a sneaky one that nobody really knows is probably Tomas Tatar. And it's not necessarily because what he posts himself, but like he's always in the back of other players' posts, and he's always doing something or making a funny face, or PK would always film the plane, and for some reason Tatar was just always in it front and center. And he loves the Devils social media too, so he likes almost every single post. He retweets a lot. He shares a lot, and he'll go up to like our social media team and he'll tell them, oh, I love that. It's so funny, like, awesome. And so I would say like, he's probably got one of the better social media presences out there.
What is it like to when you have a PK Subban on your team? Is he just a go-to guy for content, or is it almost like, hey, he's doing his own thing? Like he may not have time or want to play with us as much.
It's probably more of the latter. Like he kind of did his own thing, but if we ever like super needed something and we need a little bit more energy or something, he was kind of there to like lean on. But I'd say he always kind of like did his own thing. Like he has his own like company and like all that, which is
he,
I think more and more
hosted a game
players
show for the NHL. Like he's done a little bit of everything now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, last one for you, Chris. This is another one I'm interested to hear the answer. Tell me who's going to be the breakout player for the Devils this year. Whose game's going to take another leap this season?
I would say probably Dougie Hamilton. He's kind of low hanging fruit because he's already kind of like an all-star level player, but he had a down year last year. He was hampered by injuries. And I'm a big subscriber to the belief that the first year for a free agent or a trade acquisition, you almost kind of throw out the window because they're learning their new players, their new system, their new coaching staff, the new walk into the arena, the new training routine. Everything is different for them. And I think that a lot of times you see that first year with a new club, players struggle. You forget that they're human beings and they got a life outside of hockey. So I think that, healthy with better players around him, I think the Devils have done a pretty good job of insulating him a little bit. I think like he's going to take a step forward this year.
I like it. There we go. Book it. Dougie Hamilton, 60, 70 point season coming. Going to lead the league in power play goals, something like that. Maybe overstating it, but that's great. All right, Chris. You knocked out your one-timers. You passed the drill. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are and what platform they're on and why they're worth following.
Yeah, I've never actually met her in person, but I follow her on LinkedIn and Twitter. I think her name is Jess Smith. War Eagle, I think is her Twitter. She's a great follow for like young professionals because she amplifies so many cool and interesting and innovative things. And she always kind of like adds her own perspective on, where certain algorithms are going or different industry trends. I think she used to work for the Rangers, work for NASCAR, maybe. So I like following her on social media. I'm sorry, I don't have her handles on me.
No, it's all good. At War Jess Eagle and Jess Smith on LinkedIn. She's
great. And like I said, I've never met her in person, but as far as like social following, like from a young professional standpoint, I like she does things that maybe I wish I would do a little bit more in like amplifying different ideas and new and creative things. And I think that that's interesting because not many people are doing it. You do it a little bit yourself too. I've noticed is kind of amplifying cool things that you like. And I think that more people should do that because it's just more sharing of ideas. So that would probably be one that I would say.
I love that. Yeah, we can all learn from each other, and she does a great job helping to start and lead conversations that make us all better.
Yeah, and she amplifies jobs around the industry too. Totally. So I know for young people trying to get a start, I think like, social media all-stars follow in this industry. She would be one of them.
Hell yeah. How about Chris, where can we find you as well as all things Devils on digital social media? So
what's funny? I probably wouldn't have social media for me personally if I didn't need it for work. I don't really post a lot myself, but you can follow me on Twitter at the Chris Wescott. My Instagram's private. I kind of keep that just to my family, but my Twitter there, I tweet a little bit about the Devils and my observations of the team, but I think I want to start tweeting more like Jess. Maybe we'll see. But I would say that that's probably the best way to follow me is on Twitter.
And where should we go find the Devils everywhere?
At NJ Devils, almost on every platform. And definitely follow our TikTok this year and our Instagram this year because we've got a lot of fun ideas and we're really looking forward to kind of growing that platform that kind of set a little bit dormant for us. But I've talked with our social team and we've got a lot of good ideas flowing. So we're excited about it.
Highly recommend following along with everything Devils are doing. I've learned a lot just from following along with them, and you get inspired. You get to see the strategy play out, and there's a method to the madness, as you guys now know from hearing Chris talk today. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast, Chris, and lending us some of your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you so much, Neil. I really appreciate it.
What a wonderful time it was today, being able to talk to Chris Wescott, Senior Manager of Content Strategy for the New Jersey Devils. I could, again, trade stories, trade insights, go down rabbit holes with him all day. Just a great set of lessons. I hope you took notes because I learned a lot today, and I hope all the listeners did as well. And we thank Chris a lot for his time as he gears up for a busy New Jersey Devils season. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on LinkedIn, where I post more content. On Twitter, as always, hit me up there at NJH287. Follow the podcast on your preferred podcast platforms and check out the website for more content and all episodes at dsmsports.net. And see me next time as we'll come back with a new episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.